All righty. So we're live now. Quickly check. Okay. Yes, we are live. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We're gathered here today to have a book discussion. We are live. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. All right. Let's see. Hold on. We're gathered here today to have a book discussion. I'm going to make Farhana host again. All right. So inshallah, we are going to start now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm going to start with the recitation of surah, the first 12 ayat of Surah Al-Insan, also known as Surah Heir. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا إنا أعتدنا للكافرين سلاسل وأغلالا وسعيرا إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا إنا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا فوقاهم الله شر ذلك اليوم ولقاهم وَلَقَّاهُمْ نَظْرَةً وَسُرُورًا وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم. And the translation, I'm using the study Quran. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Has there come upon man a span of time in which he was a thing unremembered? Truly, we created man from a drop of mixed fluid that we may test him, and we endowed him with hearing and seeing. Truly, we guided him upon the way, be he grateful or ungrateful. We have surely prepared for the disbelievers chains, shackles, and a blazing flame. Truly, the pious drink of a cup mixed with camphor, a fountain whereof drink the servants of God while they make it gush forth abundantly. They fulfill their vows and fear a day whose evil is widespread, and give food, despite loving it, to the indigent, the orphan, and the captive. We feed you only for the face of Allah. We do not desire any recompense or thanks from you. Truly, we fear from our Lord a grim, calamitous day. So God has shielded them from the evil of that day, bestowed upon them radiance and joy, and rewarded them for having been patient with the garden and with silk. Sadaqallah al-Azim. These were ayat that had come down for the Hazrat Ali and his family, Bifadl Zahra, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain. And so I thought to start it with that. And over to you, Khusrai.
Assalamu alaikum. So now I'll request Dr. Ali Abbas to do a salam. Ali Abbas bhai. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So presenting an introspective eulogy of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, which also brings out some of the different facets of his personality, which will be a topic of discussion later on. Curled up in my chair, sometimes I despair what my fate'll be before His Majesty. His will be the throne, I will be alone on that other side of infinity. Justice will proclaim, oh, Mr. Talk, no deed. Your selfishness and greed deserve no clemency. With no one left to blame, I'll hang my head in shame, and nothing will occur to me except your name. Ya Mushkil Kusha, Ya Maula Ali, come and rescue me from my own tyranny. In this time of need, won't you pay me heed? Won't you intercede with His Majesty? Shah-e Awliya, Imamul Muttaqeen, Allah's mercy shines upon your blessed face. Not just your Shia, the world cannot forget the standards that you set for justice and grace. Clueless in the dark, I found your Noah's Ark, showing me the light anchoring my faith, walking in the sands or traveling through space. Everywhere I had your footsteps to trace. Ya Mushkil Kusha, Ya Maula Ali, come and rescue me from my own tyranny. In this time of need, won't you pay me heed? Won't you intercede with His Majesty? You would never fight in anger or for might, for Allah's pleasure was your one and only goal. But those who came to blight the messenger of light would meet your Zulfiqar and pay a heavy toll. Yet setting you apart was strength of head and heart, your eloquence in speech, enchanting every soul. Never shall we find such opposites combined, and never shall we see a man of such control. Qahirul Udu, Waliyun Wali, Madharul Ajaib, Ya Murtada Ali. In this time of need, won't you pay me heed? Won't you intercede with His Majesty? Sallu ala Muhammad.
Ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
So I'll do the introductions. Assalamu alaikum again. So Ali Abbas bhai, Jazakallah. Beautiful words, very powerful. And I know you can carry the whole program by yourself, but inshallah next time. So we will give our scholar some time today. And I want to give a big thank you to Dr. Hassan Abbas for giving us this time. He's a very busy man, doing a lot of sometimes multiple commitments in a single day. And he's still on his book tour. So Dr. Abbas's book is the first biography of Imam Ali by a Western scholar and published by Yale University Press. I think that's a big honor and speaks volumes in itself. So most Western scholarship and academia had used histories and Islamic histories and primary sources which were written in very hostile and regimes, like the Umayyads and the Abbasids. So the scholars had to deal with relentless existential threats and had to grapple with what went so terribly wrong after the death of the Prophet. And then they went on to sugarcoat history, extrapolating facts and figures in retrospect. So Dr. Abbas is among the line of scholars who have dared to look at history from the other side, like Wilfred Madelung, Paul Walker, Leslie Hazelton, Amer Moizzi, Farhad Daftari, Raza Shah Kazmi, to name a few, and give us the true perspective on history. So this book, and I want to make a quote from him, his book. So he says, the truth in history sometimes hurts, but also holds the promise to liberate those who are willing to accept it. So I think that's a beautiful quote from Dr. Abbas. And so Dr. Hassan Abbas has many, many distinctions and accolades. I can't go through them in this short introduction, but he's currently a distinguished professor of international relations at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C. And he's a senior advisor at Howard University's Weatherford Center for International Affairs. His current research focuses on building narratives of countering political and religious extremism and the rule of law reforms in developing states. So he's also served as a professor and department chair at the National Defense University College of International Affairs, Security Affairs, and professor at Columbia University. He's appeared on various television shows, including CNN, Fox, Daily Show with Jon Stewart, NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, Charlie Rose Show, MSNBC, and CBS and NBC also. And then now he's gracing us, and it's an honor to have him as a guest for the Khandan. And I've included my Nawashia family and also my other friends and family in this session. So it's truly an honor. He's testified in front of Congress at Capitol Hill, and one of his speeches was on women fighting for peace, lessons for today's conflict. And I remember, if I don't remember wrongly, I think he even brought up Bibi Zainab in one of his sessions at the Capitol Hill. So, and he's also done on the United States Commission of International Religious Freedom in the US Congress on protecting houses of worship and holy sites. So he's traveled to pretty much almost all Islamic nations and several times to the ziyarah of Iraq, Iran, and Syria. So it's a pretty amazing career. He has some very fascinating publications. One of the books is called Taliban Revival, Violence and Extremism in Pakistan, of the Pakistan-Afghan border, frontier, sorry. And then this was also published by the Yale University Press. And Pakistan's Nuclear Bomb, A Story of Defiance, Deterrence, and so this was published by Oxford University in 2018. And then there's also a book called Pakistan's Drift to Extremism, and it's a pretty amazing book. So before we let the scholars speak today, I want to also introduce our interviewer, Zulekha, who is no stranger to the Khandan, and everyone knows her towering personality, no pun intended there, and also her boundless energy and enthusiasm. So Zulekha is multi-talented and very knowledgeable. But for those of you who don't know her, she's also a brilliant journalist and award-winning TV producer, and has her own show, The Stream, at Al Jazeera, which is a live show. She has graduated with double masters from American University and has developed an interest in journalism at MPAC. And she was also part of the Faith Advisory Council to the National Democratic Committee, and has the honor of giving a prayer for Obama at the Mile High City, Mile High, in a helicopter with a priest and a rabbi. She thinks this is the beginning of a joke, but it's not. So she has also been a reporter for the Voice of America Urdu service to Pakistan. And in her part-time, she organizes mega reunions for the family, with being part of this dynamic trio of Farhana Rastu, who is the brain behind this meeting, doing the tech support. So without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Zulekha. So actually, one more thing, as we commemorate the days leading up to the Shahada of Imam Ali, I want to put a quote in from Dr. Abbas's book that Imam Ali has never really died. His spirit lives on the lips of poets, and the hearts of people, and the spirits of Sufi and mystics, and in the minds of intellectuals. He remains as gravitational now as he was in life. So we will kind of let them talk about the fragrance of Imam Ali, or as Allama Iqbal says, Boo-e Asadullahi. Jab ishq sikata hai adab-e khudagahi, khulte hain ghulamon par asrar-e shahenshai. Attar ho, Rumi ho, Razi ho, Ghazali, कुछ हाथ नहीं आता बे आहे सुबहगाही दारा और सिकंदर से वो मर्द फकीर उला जिसकी फकीरी में आती है बू असदुल्लाह.
Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Zabardast. Sabse pehle, thank you so much to Dr. Ali Abbas for the excellent rendition of his manqabat. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Khusra Bhai, for that super long introduction. But first, I want to start off with how amazing is this book? I know so many members of my Khandan have already read it, are reading it right now, and the questions are coming in. So I'm so happy and thankful to Dr. Hassan Abbas for giving us his time. I wish this was live on Al Jazeera, but this is the closest I can do. Thank you so much for that. I wanted to just say, first of all, like, you know, your book goes down so smooth. It's crystal clear writing. Like my mom says, it's scholarly, but not dense. I mean, that's kind of what you want for our audience. And I wanted to say that, you know, I had asked once, I don't know if many are familiar with Dr. Azra Raza. She's also a scholar in her own right. I had asked her, you know, I was looking for a book on Imam Ali that sort of encompasses a wider academic sort of perspective that is palatable to us. It's not like speaking from one extreme or the other. And she was like, well, that book hasn't been written yet, but is in the process. Speak to Dr. Hassan Abbas in a year. And so I am so happy that, you know, we're finally been able to connect and have this on. I'm just going to have you start with a short talk, and then we can get into questions. Please send in your questions on YouTube live. I'll be taking them in as we're speaking. And before we get started, our first question from one of my cousins, Suhail Sen, who says, what is one of the greatest lessons you drew from writing this book, and how can we come together and strive to honor Hazrat Ali's legacy today? I think that is one of the big questions, and I know that Dr. Abbas, you would like to speak to that as well, honoring the legacy of Imam Ali. Bismillah.
Thank you very much. It's truly an honor and a great pleasure, and to talk with all of you. I'm very grateful to Bhai. I'm very grateful to you, Sulasha, and thank you so much, Dr. Ali Abbas. His manqabat is still ringing in my ears, and even if the program had ended with his manqabat, the message was conveyed. The purpose of my initial comments, and I'll be very brief, is just to give you a little bit idea about the journey, the need, and where to go from here in terms of trying to understand the central message and the core message of Imam Ali. And if you're okay, I'll jump in between Urdu and English also. If many of you, or if some of you don't understand Urdu, then maybe send a message, and I'll receive a text message here from Zulaikha, and I'll convert immediately to English. But I want to go in between. सबसे पहली बात समझनी है, बहुत ज़रूरी है कि इमाम अली अलैहिस्सलाम का पैगाम समझना अहम है, लेकिन ये सबसे बड़ी हकीकत समझनी ज़रूरी है कि इमाम अली का पैगाम और उनकी सारी जद्दोजहद और उनकी सारी स्पिरिचुअलिटी, ये एक मुकम्मल रिफ्लेक्शन थी और है जो हुजूर अकरम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की ज़ात थी। और मैं इसका आगाज़ इस बात से भी करना चाहता हूँ कि मैं बहुत जगहों पे गया, बहुत से लोगों को इंटरव्यू किया, बहुत से लोगों से बात सुनी, क्योंकि मुझे लगता था किताबें पढ़ के कि एक है रिटन हिस्ट्री जो किताबों में लिखी है, हमें मौका कम मिलता है रिटन हिस्ट्री पढ़ने का भी, लेकिन एक है ओरल हिस्ट्री जो हम खतीबों से सुनते हैं, जो हम मजालिस में सुनते हैं, जो हम सेमिनार्स में सुनते हैं, और बाज़ दफ़ा बाज़ अहम मक़ालात और बड़ी अहम और ख़ूबसूरत बातें होती हैं, वो उनका रेफरेंस नहीं मिलता। तो मैंने सोचा कि ज़रूरी है कि लोगों से बात की जाए और लोगों से सुना जाए और फिर उसको ट्रेस करें। और सबसे बेहतरीन जगह थी मुझे लगी कि सऊदी अरेबिया है, इराक है, ईरान भी है। और जिन लोगों से बातें की, उनमें से एक सबसे जो मेरी अहम सीरीज़ ऑफ मीटिंग्स थी, वो रही आयतुल्लाह सैयद सईदुल हकीम के साथ। और ये जो 4 मराजा कराम हैं, आयतुल्लाह सिस्तानी, बशीर नजफ़ी और इसहाक, उनके साथ ये चौथे, ही इज़ द 4th पिलर ऑफ मरजइयत इन इराक। उनके पास मैं 5-7 दफ़ा गया, और जब मैं आखिरी दफ़ा उनके पास से आने लगा, वो मुझे कहने लगे 3-4 साल से कि आप हर साल आते हैं तो मैं समझता हूँ आप किताब लेके आएंगे, आप फिर अगले सवाल लेके आ जाते हैं। तो मैंने कहा जी मुझे अभी बहुत सी बातें समझने में वक्त लग रहा है। اور میں نے جب ان سے آخری بات ہوئی میں نے کہا اور مولانا حضرت میں اب کتاب لے کر ہی آؤں گا. وہ اللہ کا کرنا ایسا ہوا کہ پھر کووڈ ہو گیا اور واقعی اب میں ایک سال میں نے دل میں سوچا کتاب تو بھی سال ڈیڑھ اور ہے, اگلی دفعہ میں کیسے آؤں گا. تو وہ کووڈ ہوا, پر اس کے بعد اب موقع ملے گا. انہوں نے مجھے آخری جو جملے کہے میں وہ آپ سے ہدیہ کے طور پہ شیئر کرنا چاہتا ہوں. انہوں نے مجھے کہا کہ دیکھیں ایسی کوئی بات نہ کتاب میں لکھیے گا جس سے یہ لگے کہ آپ علی کی ذات کو ایز این انڈیپینڈنٹ ذات ثابت کر رہے ہیں کہ کوئی بھی ان کا فیچر, کوئی بھی ان کا کیریکٹرسٹک جو ہے وہ ان کا ذاتی ایٹریبیوٹ ہے. علی کے پاس جو کچھ ہے رسول کا دیا ہوا ہے, علی کے پاس جو کچھ ہے اس نے رسول سے سیکھا ہے. That kind of was in a sense shocking for me, not that I didn't believe in that, but I realized so often, and in this modern context, so often we miss this point. And this is the marja who has reached the excellence of his scholarship. He's at the real top in terms of scholarship. And he is saying, don't say a thing which creates a confusion in the mind of anyone as if we are building Ali in parallel as a separate entity. اور یہ بات مجھے بہت یاد آئی. ابھی ایک واقعہ ہوا چند دنوں پہلے. یہ میرا انٹروڈکٹری ریمارکس, صرف 3 کہانیاں مجھے سنانی ہیں, پھر ہم سوال جواب پہ چلے جائیں گے. تو آپ تھینک یو فار یور پیشنس. بٹ یہ تینوں کہانیاں جو ہیں یہ ایک تھوڑی سی انسائٹ پیش کرتی ہیں. پہلی بات یہ آیت اللہ سعید الحکیم والی تھی. یاد اس سے مجھے دوسری بات یہ آئی کہ چند دن پہلے کیلیفورنیا کے ایک بہت بڑے ایونٹ میں, یہ میں واقعہ کچھ تقریر میں سنا چکا ہوں بٹ اٹس ورتھ کہ آپ لوگ سنیں. ایک بہت بڑا ایونٹ ہوا اسی طرح جس میں بے شمار لوگ تھے. انہوں نے مجھے بڑا پہلے کہا کہ دیکھیے ہمارے پاس تقریباً 1100 لوگ ہیں اور یہ سارے اہل سنت کے 3 سینٹرز ہیں, تو ذرا انہوں نے مجھے یعنی تھوڑا سا وارن کیا کہ کوئی سیکٹیرین بات نہ کیجیے گا, کیونکہ اہل سنت کا اجتماع تھا. میں نے کہا نہیں ایسی کوئی بات نہیں کہ مجھے سیکٹیرین بات کرنے کی کوئی ضرورت نہیں ہے. لیکن جب انہوں نے میرا تعارف کرایا تو اس تعارف میں انہوں نے آغاز کیا, ان کی مہربانی, انہوں نے کہا کہ حسن عباس کو ہم نے اس لیے بلایا ہے that he speaks like a Sunni and he writes like a Sunni. تو میں تھوڑا سا الرٹ ہوا اور میں نے سوچا کہ میں اس کے جواب میں نے کہوں گا کہ yes maybe I speak like a Sunni, I write like a Sunni, maybe I think like a Shia. پھر میں نے کہا کوئی ضرورت نہیں ہے اس طرح کا کوئی بیان دینے کی, یا ایسی انہوں نے ایک محبت میں کہا ہے ٹھیک ہے. بعد میں مجھے موقع ملا ان گروپ کے جو باقی لوگ تھے جنہوں نے آرگنائز کیا ان کے ساتھ, اس ایونٹ کے درمیان بحث ہو گئی سخت غدیر خم کے اوپر. وہ ایک الگ موقع ہے, اگر موقع ملا بعد میں تو میں ذکر کروں گا. میں نے ان کے ایک اور صاحب سے پوچھا کہ یہ ان کی محبت ہے, میرے لیے آنر ہے, مجھے سنی کہیں, شیعہ کہیں, صوفی کہیں, I have no issues. لیکن یہ انہوں نے کیوں کہا؟ اس لیے کہ ان کی آڈینس تھی, ان کو ذرا یہ ڈیفینسو تھے کہ اپنے میرے لوگ کیا کہیں گے کہ یہ انہوں نے شیعہ کو کیوں بلایا, بظاہر ٹاپک سے نام سے وہ اگر شیعہ لگتا ہے. تو انہوں نے کہا نہیں ایسی بات نہیں ہے, ہمارا خیال ہے کہ آپ نے کتاب کے پہلے 2 چیپٹر جو لکھے ہیں اس میں جو آپ نے مدح محمد کی ہے, رسول اکرم سے محبت کا جو اظہار کیا ہے, اتنی محبت تو رسول سے تو صرف اہل سنت کرتے ہیں. میں نے کہا جی آپ کا کیا مطلب ہے کہ اہل تشیع جو ہیں وہ رسول سے محبت نہیں کرتے؟ انہوں نے کہا نہیں وہ تو علی ان کے لیے سب سے عام ہے نا. اب یہ میں ان لوگوں سے بات کر رہا ہوں جو بہت اسکالرز ہیں, جو بڑے ریلیجس سینٹر چلا رہے ہیں, اور وہ مجھ سے جھوٹ نہیں کہہ رہے تھے, وہ اپنے دل کی بات کہہ رہے تھے. اور میں یہ چاہتا تھا کہ میں کبھی ایسے گروپس کو ضرور کہوں جہاں میجورٹی اہل تشیع کی ہو, جس طرح یہاں پہ ہے, کہ ایسا نہیں ہے کہ اہل تشیع پہ کوئی الزام لگا سکتا ہے. اب تو رسول اکرم کی اور اہل بیت سے محبت اس لیے کرتے ہیں کہ وہ رسول کی آل ہیں. لیکن آپ یہ سمجھیں کہ آپ کے نیریٹیوز کیا ہیں, اور آپ کے نیریٹیوز کی جو ایک ڈومیننٹ ویو ہے اس کی وجہ سے بعض لوگوں کے ہاں اگنورنس کی وجہ سے, لیک آف اویئرنیس کی وجہ سے کچھ باتیں سمجھنے سے کیسے رہ جاتی ہیں. اسی طرح بہت سے اس کتاب کے سلسلے میں جب میں نے لوگوں سے انٹرویو کیا اہل تشیع سے, اور میں نے ان سے آرگومنٹ پوچھے کہ اچھا مجھے آپ سمجھیں کہ مجھے نہیں کچھ پتا, اور مجھے بتائیں کہ علی کی فضیلت سب کے اوپر کیسے آیا ہے, تو وہ مجھے 2-3 واقعات قرآن کی آیات سن کے کہیں دیکھیں نا باقی لوگ اندھے ہیں, باقی لوگ بہرے ہیں, یہ ان کو پڑھنا نہیں آتا, یہ پڑھ کے آج سمجھتے نہیں. میں نے کہا حضرت وہ اس ٹریڈیشن میں پلے بڑھے, آپ اپنی ٹریڈیشن میں پلے بڑھے, یہ کس نے کیا سمجھ کے اس کو کیسے سمجھا, یہ تو ہم عام خاندان میں اپنے دوستوں کے اندر کسی نہ کسی بات پہ غلط فہمی ہو جاتی ہے. آپ تو اپنے قریبی ترین لوگوں کو آپ اپنے اوپینین ظاہر نہیں کر سکتے اور غلط فہمی بن جاتی ہے. تو یہ جنہوں نے پڑھا ہی نہیں ہے, جو اسلام کی لمبی تاریخ ہے اس میں اگر غلط فہمی ہوتی ہے تو اس کو ڈیل کرنے کا طریقہ یہ ہے کہ باتوں کے پیٹرن اور کور آرگومنٹس کو سمجھا جائے اور محبت سے بات کی جائے, محبت سے بات سمجھائی جائے. تیسری بات جو پہلے ہمارے موضوع سے جو خسرو بھائی نے کہی کہ ہسٹوریکلی، 1 منٹ کا میں توقف لوں گا ذرا مجھے گلا ٹھیک کرنے کے لیے. I'm sorry. تیسری بات جو میرے ذہن میں واقعہ ہے وہ جو خسرو بھائی نے کہا کہ ہسٹوریکلی لوگوں نے بڑے خوف کے بیچ میں مدائے محمد و آل محمد بیان کی. تو آج ہم ایسی دنیا میں خاص کر ویسٹ میں جہاں اس طرح کے کوئی پریشرز نہیں ہیں، لیکن میں ایک صاحب کے پاس گیا جو بہت صاحب علم تھے اور ان کی علمیت اور ان کے مقام و مرتبے میں مجھے ذرا سا بھی شک نہیں ہے. جب میں نے ان کو بیان کیا کہ میں اور میرے وہ بزرگ بھی تھے، آپ کہہ دیں کہ مرشد والا کچھ سلسلہ تھا، اور استاد تو یقیناً ہیں اور تھے ہی. ان سے جب میں نے پہلی دفعہ انہیں بتایا کہ میں حضرت علی علیہ السلام کی سوانح حیات لکھ رہا ہوں، تو ان کے چہرے پہ کوئی جتنی میں خوشی ایکسپیکٹ کر رہا تھا ویسی نہیں آئی، حالانکہ ساری گائیڈنس ہی وہ دیتے تھے مختلف موضوعات پہ. انہوں نے کہا یہ آپ نے بہت مشکل کام اپنے ذمہ لے لیا. میں نے کہا نہیں شاہ صاحب، لیکن یہ بڑا موقع ہے. یہ بیان کیا کہ کیسے ایکیڈیمک پریس ہیں اور وہ کتنا اہم ہے اور کتنا مشکل ہوتا ہے ان سے کانٹریکٹ لینا اور وہ سارا سلسلہ ویسٹرن اکیڈیمیا میں. انہوں نے کہا وہ تو سب سچ ہے، لیکن اگر یہ ان کے بیان تھا، انہوں نے کہا اگر آپ نے علی کے بارے میں سچ لکھ دیا کہ علی کیا ہے تو آپ کے ساتھ بھی وہی ہوگا جو تاریخ میں سب کے ساتھ ہوا ہے. میں نے کہا جی کیا مطلب؟ انہوں نے میرے سامنے خاکہ بنایا. انہوں نے کہا میں یہ خاکہ بنا کے آپ کو بتا سکتا ہوں کہ آپ کو ایسے بیسیکلی واٹ ہی سیڈ محاورے میں دیٹ یو ول بی کلڈ. میں نے کہا اچھا شاہ صاحب، پھر تو علی کے نام پہ حق بیان کرتے ہوئے مارے جائیں تو اس سے اچھی کیا بات ہے. انہوں نے کہا یہ بڑا مسئلہ ہے اہل تشیع کا، آپ سارے شہید ہونا چاہتے ہیں، آپ کو زندہ رہنے کے لیے بھی جو پیغام ہے ہستیوں کے وہ بھی تو آگے لے کے چلیں اور ایسی بات لکھیں جو لوگوں کو جوڑیں. کیوں یہ میں اس واقعہ اس لیے میں نے بیان کیا سارا. انہوں نے کہا کہ اگر علی کی یہ قربانی ہی نہ سمجھی کہ علی لوگوں کو جوڑنے کے لیے آئے تھے، تو پھر آپ اگر لوگوں کو جوڑ نہیں سکتے تو آپ علی کے مقام کے ساتھ اور علی کے پیغام کے ساتھ لوئل نہیں. Thank you very much. I took longer than what was supposed to be, but I thought I'll share these 3 anecdotes to set the stage. Back to you, Zoraida.
نہیں شکریہ بہت بہت. I think it really sets the stage of my first question which was going to be why did you write this book, لیکن اس کا آپ نے بخوبی جواب دے دیا already. میں یہ دیکھنا چاہ رہی تھی کہ ایک سیشن میں آپ سے ییل یونیورسٹی پریس, I mean first of all you know I mean it's such an exciting thing کہ ییل نے آپ کو یہ کتاب لکھنے کے لیے کہا. So when you said I wanted to write about Ali, they said, well, first question from one of them was why Ali, right? And for our Western audience and for the rest of the world who is not Sunni or Shia, they're not Muslim, why Ali?
Extremely important. One, foremost, I wanted to write something, also something which all Muslims, irrespective of their color, creed, or ethnicity or their sectarian identity, that they feel comfortable with, or at least they're willing to consider, because most of the books are under these. This is by the Shia school of thought. This is the Ismaili group. These are Alawis. These are Sufis. They think, and this is the Sunni school of thought. And I thought, no, this has to be something which borrows from all of those. And why Ali? And in answering that, and in a sense also, and this is how initially it worked out, because frankly, I am neither a scholar of Islamic studies. I'm not trained as a Islamic studies scholar. I'm also not trained as a historian. And these two are critical things for anyone to even claim that they will write an academic book, which is a biography. So the initial argument that worked, when one of my editor, when asked specifically and directly, she said, they had actually given me few manuscripts on Islamic personalities, mostly on Sirat Rasulullah. And they said, what do you think? And then when I mentioned that none of those were worth, in my humble view, to proceed, and I mentioned to them, pick other personalities, and they said, whom? And when I said Ali, they said, who's Ali and why Ali? So when they said, who's Ali, I said, how close he was to the Prophet, the warrior, the professor, the warrior, the philosopher, the spiritual guy, the patron saint. Still, my editor said, but what is the relevance today, Hassan? Why Americans would read it today? And then I, on the spot, said to her that today, the way Islam is looked at is from the angle of extremism, religious extremism. all the enemies of Ali were the ones who became the founders of what today is ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Taliban. Without understanding the opponents of Ali and those who challenged Ali, you just cannot understand the roots of radicalization within the Islamic context. On that, she jumped and she said, "Oh, really? Tell us more." And that's what I have proved in the book, in a sense. Proved is the word easy to say, but at least I have given solid references why this modern day authoritarianism and greed for power that is so obvious in so many Muslim states, in Middle East, in the Arab world, all this authoritarianism, all this greed for power, these tactics of this leadership, which is all for themselves. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan was the fountain of this worldview of authoritarianism. Also, Daesh and ISIS, Wahhabism and Salafism, the way they had Wahhabism, especially when they had started, that's how they had started. And they borrowed their inspiration from Khawarij, especially going to ISIS, most certainly. Wahhabism, still you can say there was a theological argument. Still, there can be some reforms. But Khawarij to ISIS, the link is so direct. So that's how I would argue.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the main questions that I felt helps us in understanding your book is, what are some of the things, because you bring in all the different perspectives that are out there, what do Sunnis think they know about Ali but get wrong? And what do Shias think they know about Ali but get wrong?
Very important question. Thank you so much for this question. And I'll not be careful. I'll say it candidly what I have to say. And then you can judge and make your own interpretation. I think Sunnis tend to believe that the dispute between the caliphs and the first three caliphs and Ahlul Bayt were always friendly and cordial. I say they get it wrong because mainstream history of Islam, Sunni as well as Shia, challenges that worship very, very clearly. It is in main books, and that's what I have, all the references that I've given, and I was very particular to give those references so that a Sunni will immediately say, no, this is not supported by history, and say, please read the history. Don't even read the history of mainstream Sunni sources, because there are many well-known Sunnis, for example, Tabri, and people had started saying, oh, Tabri is actually a Shia. When Maulana Maududi wrote Khilafat-u Mulukiyat, people start challenging. The first challenge to him was he's become Shia. So I said, no, let's not go to those personalities who you can challenge. No one has ever said that Sahih Bukhari and Muslim were Shia. So I'll stick to Muslim, Bukhari, and Sunan ibn Nasa'i, the three most phenomenal works. And there it becomes obvious. So there, and the Sunni view, to be fair to the Sunni view for a second, they think that it is inconceivable, given the high status of Ahlul Bayt and Panjatan, they think it is impossible that somebody could dare challenge them, and somebody could dare do things which, in their view, Shias say. And now that wall is so entrenched in the mindset, because give them their due, they so often go only to their own centers and their own events. And unlike the Shia tradition, where you go to Imam Bargahs and Islamic centers on Muharram, on the Wiladat and Shahadat of all the Imams, on so many, on Ghadir, on Miraj. In the Sunni tradition, in the middle class Sunni tradition, how many times people go to the mosque? Maybe yes, for Friday prayers, that's more regular. It's normally a short khutbah. So the chances of narrative building and challenge to that, there is slightly restricted, or there are fewer opportunities. So they believe that the love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had brought this great revolution, and these were his companions who expanded the frontiers of Islam, and Islam then turned into these big empires which had a huge impact on history. And from their perspective, how is it possible in the early years something so terrible happened? That's where Sunnis need to go back to history, because they don't know how actually they owe also to Ahlul Bayt that they were able to overcome those initial challenges. If Imam Ali and his family members had also responded the way things had come from the other side, things would have gone to a conflict very early on. And coming to the Shia view, what they miss, I think they exactly miss this point. Number one, giving Sunnis a chance to think what they think, rather than always saying that Sunnis actually know that it was Ahlul Bayt whose right it was, but they just ignore it. No, why would they ignore it? Do all Sunnis want to go to hell? I mean, that's Shias need to understand this, that they genuinely believe in certain things. If they genuinely believe in certain things, they have their own sources. You talk to them. That's why the need for dialogue is important. And why the Shia and Sunni dialogue on these issues have not happened, because the Wahhabis and the extremists, Khawarij and put the extreme, they have stopped that. The extremes on the Shia side also have stopped that narrative or dialogue to build on. Shia also dwell on, this is more sensitive issue I'm raising very briefly. She's dwell more on the injustice to Imam Ali to an extent that takes away the extraordinary contribution of Imam Ali in keeping the Muslim unity together. The reason he was given such high status, Ali ka mujhse wo rishta hai jo Harun ka Musa se tha, man kuntu maula fahaza aliyun maula, ana madinatul ilmi wa aliyun babuha. ये तो मैं हदीस आपको सुना रहा हूँ. कुरान की आयत जो हैं वो इतनी वाज़ेह हैं, इतनी क्लियर हैं, क्योंकि स्टेटस इतना ऊंचा था इसलिए इम्तिहान भी इतना बड़ा था. उस इम्तिहान को उन्होंने, उसमें कोई नफरत नहीं बोई. जब नहीं उनको हक मिला सकीफा में, उन्होंने तलवार निकाली क्या? वो जाके उन्होंने जंग लड़ी क्या? नहीं, ना जंग लड़ी ना तलवार की. क्या पॉलिटिकल कैंपेन किया? जो ये लोग कहते हैं कि शुरू के दिनों में बीबी ने और हज़रत अली ने सब लोगों के पास गए, उनको कहा कि आप हमारे साथ आएं, और क्योंकि लोग नहीं आए तो वो खड़े रह गए. आप मौला अली को ऐसा मजलूम क्यों पेश कर रहे हैं जो मजलूम वो नहीं थे? आप ये क्यों आप समझते हैं कि इमाम अली इमाम बने उस दिन जिस दिन वो खलीफा बने थे चौथे? इमाम अली जिस दिन रसूल की रहलत हुई उस दिन इमाम बने थे. उनकी बहसियत इमाम रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी थी लोगों को जोड़ना. उन्होंने कहा अच्छा किसी को पॉलिटिकल ग्रीड है, किसी को जेलसी है, ओके, मैं तो इस मिशन मोहम्मद आले मोहम्मद और मिशन इस्लाम को आगे लेके चलना था. इस मिशन मोहम्मद आले मोहम्मद ये था कि मजहब हक का पैगाम लेके आगे जाया जाए. तो उन्होंने इन बातों को दरगुजर किया. उन्होंने कहा मेरे लिए अहमियत नहीं रखती. हम अगर उस सारे में उनको एक ऐसे कॉन्फ्लिक्ट जोन में पेश कर दें और उनको एक बता दें कि ये तो जैसे अल्लाह की मशीयत थी उसके खिलाफ हो गया, तो ये थोड़ा सा नुआंस है. मेरे लफ्ज़ों पे ना जाएं अगर कोई मैंने सख्त लफ्ज़ कहा हो. इस बात को समझें कि अली से उनका जो मकाम है और उनकी जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है उसको अपने इश्क और लॉयल्टी में उसको ज़ाया ना कर दें. These are the two things how I would put what Sunnis get it wrong, where Shias need to, some Shias, not all Shias, some Shias who think on those lines need to rethink.
नहीं, वो बिल्कुल सही है. आई थिंक शियाज एक ओरल ट्रेडिशन है हमारे पास इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग मिंबर का, और मिंबर से इतनी सारी चीजें सिखाई जाती हैं, बताई जाती हैं, लेकिन हमेशा ऐसा मुझे लगता है कि जैसे मिंबर और मदरसा, क्योंकि सब लोग तो जाकर स्कूल में शिया हिस्ट्री या द टॉप 6 बुक्स ऑफ द शियाज पढ़ते नहीं हैं, तो देयर इज अ गैप बिटवीन द मिंबर एंड द मदरसा, एंड दैट्स वेयर दिस बुक कम्स इन, जो बहुत सारी चीजें मेरे लिए भी बहुत ही आई ओपनिंग थी. I think one of the questions जो अभी आ रहे हैं हमारे family member से भी, कि one of the things that was fascinating in the book is that one chapter about हजरत अली का क्या किरदार था during the time of the first 3 खलीफ, and आपने उसके ऊपर mention किया था, but it's completely missing. वो बताते कि हाँ जब अली को जब उनको जरूरत थी तो अली के पास आते थे. Apart from that one line, there is nothing else. So if you could just like talk a little bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. मैं बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ इस सवाल का, और जो पेशेंस लोग मुजाहरा कर रहे हैं उसका भी, क्योंकि इन मौज़ूआत पे बात नहीं होती और हमने कुछ फिक्सेटेड व्यूज़ बनाए. देखें, सबसे अहम बात हज़रत उमर पे आए, उन मुख्तसरन, क्योंकि हज़रत अबू बकर का बहुत कम वक्त था. हज़रत उमर ने ये कुछ 7 दफ़ा या 8 दफ़ा, तो हिस्ट्री में अहले सुन्नत की किताबों में, हमारी किताबों में शिया अहले तशय्युअ की बहुत ज़्यादा है, कितनी दफ़ा उन्होंने कहा कि उमर हलाक हो जाता अली ना होते. अच्छा, बार बार कहा. एक दफ़ा अब्दुल्ला इब्ने अब्बास से कहा कि ये अली थोड़ा नाराज क्यों रहते हैं, ये हमारी जंगों में आगे हमारे साथ नहीं जाते. उन्होंने कहा आपको पता तो है, ये एग्जैक्ट मकालमा है जो आमतौर पे नहीं लिखा जाता था. विल्फ्रेड मेडलिंग ने अपनी किताब द सक्सेशन टू प्रॉफिट में लिखा, और जहां से फिर मैं ओरिजिनल सोर्सेज पे गया और मैंने लिखा. उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं, ये इसलिए उनको वो समझते हैं कि उनका हक है, तो वो क्योंकि आपने उनका हक नहीं दिया تو وہ آپ کی مدد تو کر رہے ہیں. کبھی کورٹ لیگل ایشوز میں آپ کو مصیبت پڑتی ہے, کبھی کس میں مشکل پڑتی ہے, سوالوں کے جواب نہیں ہوتے, ہمیشہ علی آتے ہیں. اور یہ تینوں خلیفوں کو تھوڑا سا کریڈٹ یہ دیں, انہوں نے کبھی کلیم نہیں کیا کہ شریعت میں اور قرآن کے علم میں ماہر ہیں. کوئی ایک کوٹیشن مجھے آپ نکال کے دکھا دیں انہوں نے کلیم کیا. وہ ہمیشہ کہتے تھے علی کو بلاؤ, ان کو پتا تھی ان کی لمیٹیشنز. یہ ان کو آپ کریڈٹ دیں کہ, اور یہ اہل سنت کو بھی سمجھنا چاہیے اور تھوڑی اپنی کتابیں پڑھنی چاہیے. جو بات میں کر رہا تھا, حضرت عمر نے جب یہ بات کی تو انہوں نے پھر جواب, انہوں نے عبداللہ ابن عباس نے پوچھا کہ اچھا تو پھر آپ کا کیا خیال ہے, کیوں آپ لوگوں نے یہ موقع نہیں دیا تھا, آپ کی کیا اوپینین ہے؟ تو انہوں نے جواب دیا کہ بات یہ ہمیں تو کوئی اعتراض نہیں تھا, لیکن یہ جو سارے اس وقت کے عرب خاندان تھے یہ کہتے تھے کہ رسالت خاندان میں بنی ہاشم کے پاس آئی ہے, خلافت بھی پھر ان کے پاس آ جائے گی, تو یہ ٹرائبلزم تھا, اس میں ہم پھنس جاتے. تو اس وجہ سے علی, انہوں نے یہ نہیں کہا ہم نہیں چاہتے, انہوں نے کہا لوگوں نے نہیں چاہنا تھا تو ہم کیا کرتے. انہوں نے بہرحال یہ تو مانا کہ حق ان کا تھا انڈائریکٹلی. دوسرا, ٹو گیو کریڈٹ, یہ امام علی کے کریکٹر کا آپ دیکھیں. عمر جب بھی کہیں باہر گئے جنگوں پہ, پیچھے اہم ترین موقع میں حضرت علی کو چھوڑ کے گئے کہ آپ مدینہ کے محافظ, کیونکہ ان کو یہ پتا تھا نہ یہ بیک سٹیبر ہیں, نہ یہ پولیٹیکل مینیپولیشن کرنے والے لوگ ہیں, نہ یہ بیک روم ڈیلز کرتے ہیں. ان کو ان کا کریکٹر بڑی اچھی طرح پتا تھا, یہ ان کو داد دیں, اور اسی لیے حضرت عمر کی مدد بھی کی. ایک اور دو باتیں جو نہیں اہل تشیع ہم کے ڈسکورس میں آتی کہ یہ درست ہے کہ حضرت علی جنگوں میں نہیں گئے, کہیں لیڈ نہیں انہوں نے کیا, اور that was a message in itself, that was a hint, very very clear hint. But the closest associates of حضرت علی, حضرت سلمان فارسی, حضرت مالک الاشتر کے بارے میں ہم جانتے ہیں حضرت علی نے کہا ان کی نسبت مجھ سے وہ ہے جو میری نسبت رسول سے تھی, اس سے زیادہ کیا کہتے. سلمان فارسی سب کو پتا ہے کہ وہ جنت کے وہ اہل بیت کے ممبر ہیں, حضور اکرم کی ذات نے فرمایا. حضرت سلمان فارسی گورنر بنے, ذرا اپنی ریسرچ کریں کس کے دور میں گورنر بنے, خلفائے راشدین کے دور میں بنے. انہوں نے علی سے نہیں پوچھا ہوگا کہ میں بن جاؤں گورنر, انہوں نے کیا ہوگا نہیں یہ غاصب ہیں, یہ جھوٹے ہیں, ان کے پاس نہیں جانا, یہ تو نہیں کہا ہوگا. ڈیڈکٹ کریں نا کچھ, اپنی ڈیڈکشن اور اپنی ہم نے کامن سینس بھی استعمال کرنی ہے. مالک الاشتر گئے جنگ فیس کرنے کے لیے, یہ کہا کہ یہ جو کیمپین ہو رہا ہے یہ اسلام دشمنی پہ, یہ بالکل اسلام کے خلاف ہے, میں اس کے خلاف ہوں, مالک الاشتر نہ جانا, یہ تو نہیں کہا, یہ تو کہیں نہیں لکھا. مالک الاشتر کا جانا ثابت کرتا ہے, یہ نہیں کہا. تو دیکھیے کچھ چیزوں کو ہسٹوریکل نیریٹو میں سمجھنے کی کوشش کریں. اور جو تین خلفاء کے دور میں, میری تو تھیوری ایک تھوڑی سی مختلف نئی یہ ہے, یہ نہیں میں کہہ رہا کہ انہوں نے کھڑے ہو کے حضرت علی نے بیعت کر لی, وہ بڑے کیٹیگوریکل تھے. انہوں نے جب حضرت عثمان کے موقع کے اوپر یہ فیصلہ ہوا کہ کون خلیفہ وقت بنے گا, حضرت علی بڑے کلیئر تھے. ان سے جب پوچھا گیا کہ آپ کی یہ کنڈیشن بنانے والوں نے کیسی کمال کی پولیٹیکل کانسپریسی کی, ان کو پتا تھا علی جھوٹ نہیں بولتے. انہوں نے کہا ایسی بات کہو کہ یہ پھنس جائیں. انہوں نے کہا آپ رسول اکرم کو اور قرآن کو مانیں گے, جی مانیں گے. آپ یہ پہلے دو جو خلفاء ہیں ان کی جو ٹرینڈ ہے, جو ان کی پالیسیز ان پہ چلیں گے, وہ کیٹیگوریکل اور آنیسٹ تھے, مین آف انٹیگریٹی. انہوں نے کہا نہیں, آئی ایم سوری. انہوں نے یہ نہیں کہا کہ میں ان کے ساتھ مل گیا, میں نے پولیٹیکل اکوموڈیشن کر لی, میں نے کمپرومائز کر دیا. بالکل حق کو, سچ کو صحیح بیان کیا, لیکن یہ بھی ثابت کر دیا کہ خلافت ایک پولیٹیکل آفس ہے, ان کو مل گیا بسم اللہ. ورنہ تو کہہ دیتے نا جب چوتھے خلیفہ بنے تھے کہ یہ آفس مجھے پسند ہی نہیں ہے, میں تو امام ہوں, خلافت کا سسٹم ختم, امامت شروع. کہیں کہا یہ کسی سورس میں لکھا ہوا ہے؟ کہیں نہیں لکھا ہوا. تو اپنی تاریخ کو پڑھیں, اس کو تھوڑا سا ری انٹرپریٹ کرنے کی کوشش کریں. ایسے بھی ری انٹرپریٹ کریں کہ آپ جو اسلام کی اساس ہے اسی کو کہیں پیچھے رکھ رہے ہیں. میں تھوڑا سا ذرا سخت بات آج کر رہا ہوں اس لیے کہ لبرٹی لیتے ہوئے کہ پڑھے لکھے لوگوں سے بات ہے, اور سوچ کے میں قطعاً یہ نہیں کہہ رہا کہ یہ میرا کہنا جو ہے یہ فتویٰ ہے, نہ میرے پاس کوئی اتھارٹی ہے, بٹ چیزوں کو اس طرح سمجھیں. اسی لیے سب لوگ آخر میں تو یہ کہوں گا کہ اس وقت کے تمام مسلمان مل کے شیعہ ہو گئے. شیعہ علی کا اگر مطلب یہ ہے کہ وہ علی کے ماننے والے, جس دن سب لوگ دوڑے حضرت عثمان کی جو بڑی ٹریجک سرکمسٹانسز میں وفات ہوئی, اس کے بعد جب سب دوڑے حضرت علی کے دروازے کے اوپر, تو وہ سب کیا تھے؟ وہ سب مان گئے نا کہ یہ علی کا حق تھا. جو سمپتھی مولا علی سے لوگوں کو ہے, جو محبت ہے, وہ سمپتھی اس میں یہ بھی ہے, سب یہ جانتے ہیں کہ ان کا حق تھا, ان کا حق نہیں ملا, اور اس حق نہ دینے کا نتیجہ کیا نکلا. اب اس کا یہ مطلب نہیں ہے کہ جن لوگوں کو اپرچونٹی ملی وہ خدا نہ خواستہ وہ کافر تھے. بڑا آسان ہے نا یہ کہہ دینا دیکھیے میں ایک اور آپ کو واقعہ بتاتا ہوں, اس پہ ذرا دوبارہ غور کریں. بات یہ ہے کہ کتاب تو اللہ کرے آپ پڑھ لیں, لیکن شاید میری کوئی ایک بات آپ کو سوچنے پہ مجبور کرے اور آپ مجھ سے بہتر نتیجے پہ پہنچیں. مجھے یقین ہے آپ مجھ سے بہتر نتیجے پہ پہنچیں گے. یہ کہنا, اور یہ میں نے سنا اور گھر میں سنا اور پڑھے لکھے لوگوں سے سنا, کہ جب ہجرت, لوگ کہتے ہیں نا اہل سنت کے, دیکھیں رسول اکرم کے ساتھ حضرت علی تو بستر پہ سوئے, جان دی, قرآن کی آیت آئی اس موقع پہ, لیکن ادھر بھی تو قرآن کی آیت آئی جہاں حضرت ابوبکر ساتھ گئے ہجرت پہ. تو ہمارے کچھ دوستوں نے کہا وہ اس لیے بات یہ ہے کہ وہ تو وہاں جب بالکل دشمن آ گیا تھا تو حضرت ابوبکر کھانسے اس لیے تھے کہ پکڑے جائیں. God say, don't be that unfair. مطلب ہے اگر کسی چیز میں جو بڑی سامنے کی چیز ہے, یہ کہاں لکھا ہے, کہاں سے آپ نے ڈیڈیوس کیا, کس کتاب سے ڈیڈیوس کیا, کس ریشنلٹی کے بیس پہ آپ نتیجے پہ پہنچے. تو بات یہ ہے, میں یہ نہیں کہہ رہا کہ کوئی ویوز غلط ہے, میں یہ کہہ رہا ہوں کہ ان میں بہت زیادہ نوینس ہے. اس نوینس کو سمجھنے سے آپ کے مذہب کو تقویت ملے گی اور آپ لوگوں کو ملا کے چلا سکیں گے. ورنہ لوگ باکسن کر دیتے ہیں آپ کے سارے پیغام کو ایک سرٹن وال دیکھ کر. اس لیے وہ 3 جو خلیفوں کے وقت میں جو کچھ ہوا, جہاں حضرت علی نے سٹینڈ لینا تھا, آخری بات کیا حضرت عثمان کے خلاف نہیں لیا؟ بالکل, یہ سب پتا تھا ایجپٹ سے لوگ آ رہے ہیں کہاں, اسی لیے تو بی بی عائشہ اور باقی لوگوں نے بعد میں ایشو بنایا کہ آپ شامل تھے, نہیں شامل تھے قطعاً, وہ کیونکہ حضرت علی کا یہ بیک سٹیبنگ کا طریقہ نہیں تھا. لیکن یہ تو آپ کی اہل تشیع کی تمام کتابوں میں لکھا ہے کہ آخری دنوں میں, بلکہ اہم ترین وقت پہ, حضرت امام حسن اور امام حسین کو کہا تم عثمان کے دروازے پہ کھڑے ہو گئے. کیوں گارڈ کیا؟ یہ پولیٹیکل کمپرومائز تھا آپ کے خیال میں؟ یہ انہوں نے اپنا گیو اپ کر رہے تھے اپنا رائٹ, یا وہ ڈرے ہوئے تھے خدا نخواستہ کسی سے؟ کیوں کیا یہ شو کرنے کے لیے کیا کہ ہم یہ جن چیزوں کے عزت کر رہے ہیں. اگلوں نے غلطیاں کی, اگلے انسان تھے, پولیٹیشنز تھے, یہ بات سمجھیں, یہ امام تھے. اس حد کو سمجھیں, ایسی بات کریں اگر جس سے لوگ اوفینڈ ہوں گے تو وہ اوفینسو میں یہ کہا گیا نا رسول اکرم سے اور اس وقت لوگوں سے کہ یہ کافر ہے نا, ان کی خداؤں کو برا مت کہو, یہ تمہارے سچے خدا کو برا کہیں گے. That's the real dilemma we are facing. Sorry, I'm going on and on. I'm energized with your excellent questions and with this beautiful community that is listening.
بہت زبردست ہے یہ. ایکچولی مجھے اب تھوڑا سا ایک دوسرے ڈائریکشن میں جانا تھا. ایک کوٹ ہے آپ کا اس میں, 2 things defined Ali more than anything else: his sense of justice and his sense of forgiveness. He barred his supporters from using abusive language against anyone, even against Muawiyah, his worst enemy. And there is a big lesson here. Like, but do you feel like we are, to be completely frank conversations we're having here, how are we straying away from that? Is this the Ali Shariati in his book talks about tawalliya and tabariya. I mean, tawalla and tabara, we all know what that is. Our aim, according to the legacy of Imam Ali that you mentioned in the book, is that we should be following in the tradition of tawalliya, in trying to bring people together through love.
Absolutely, it's another fantastic question. I'll try to be as brief as possible, looking at my eyes are on the watch for your purposes. I'm at your service. Another example that comes from a very interesting book. The reason I'm looking here and there, I'm trying to see the book and maybe show it because it's not available anywhere. It's called Masnavi Maula Ali. یہ ایک بڑے مشہور اسکالر تھے اور ایکچولی آئی جی پنجاب تھے, انسپیکٹر جنرل آف پولیس تھے, فضل حق اہل سنت سے تعلق تھا ان کا. انہوں نے واقعہ ایک لکھا, بات لمبی ہو جائے گی, مختصر سا.
Dr. Abbas, if you can mention that in English this time round.
I'm sorry. Absolutely. So this is the story of a famous story that is written in the book Masnavi Maula Ali. This is by a leading Ahl Sunnat scholar who says that the whole episode of Miraj, when the Prophet had gone to the high heaven, and then when he returned from there, according to his tradition that he mentions in detail, and I've mentioned in the book, he came back and he said to his 4 friends, according to that tradition, that he called his 4 friends and said that on that, when I met God, he gifted me a special dress, which in Urdu or Arabic it's called kharkai fakr. And he said the cloak of fakr. And he said, the Prophet said to his 4 friends without naming them, I am ready to give it to you, but I need to ask a question to test all of you. They said, yes. The first was, he said, the question is simple. If I give this kharkai fakr to you, this cloak of spirituality, of some special secret powers. What will you do with that authority and power? And the first person, the first friend of the Prophet, who remains unnamed in references, said, I'll give a lot of charity. The second one said, I'll expand the horizons of Islam. The third one said, I'll propagate Islam. I'll project it, proselytize it. Then came the turn of Imam Ali. What will you do, Ali, with this authority and power? And it's the most phenomenal answer that Imam Ali gave. He said, I will conceal others' mistakes and blunders. यानी मैं लोगों की गलतियों पे पर्दा डालूंगा, गीबत नहीं करूंगा, उनको expose नहीं करूंगा. And the Prophet said, the kharka fakr is yours. That's the best answer. What was it about? It was about forgiveness, and it is about ignoring what is to be ignored, and it is about actually concealing. If you know people think of in the sense of riba, and think in sense of in the sense of actually concealing others' mistakes and blunders. He did that actually. He proved it. I was stunned because I had not heard this tradition in the Shia Majalis. So I went to the Sunni scholars and I asked them, and most of them said we have not heard it. Then I went to actually the son of Inspector General of Police who had written this, and I was able to get hold of this original manuscript, which is published, which is not being republished for some reason. Maybe we should publish it because it is another beautiful story in it as well, which I leave it for some other time. But I went to the Sufis and they said, of course, this is the most famous Sufi statement. We use it so often, and Ahl Sunnah scholars told me. So there are many things which remain hidden, and I'm linking this with the Muawiyah and all the others. What the way Imam Ali wanted Muawiyah to be projected, that those are very clearly written in Nahjul Balagha and his letters to Muawiyah. He challenged him. He basically threatened him, warned him. And however, when some close associates of Imam Ali, and this is again from all Shia sources, because on these issues I knew I have to have Shia sources. When some people would abuse Muawiyah, they said, no need to abuse. Not that don't criticize, that is different. He never said hide the truth, because he's the one who said, I'm not going to extend him as a governor. Abdullah ibn Abbas, so many others said, for political reason, Imam, let's keep him as governor of Damascus. We'll deal with him later on. But Imam Ali was such a man of integrity and straightforward, candid person. He said, no, I'm not going to keep him as a governor for a single day. So it's again, no compromise, total clarity. However, he said no abusive language. Same with Khawarij. When Khawarij, till that time, and this is, I borrow this from one of my friends in UK, who had said Imam Ali was the biggest proponent of freedom of, not only freedom of speech, freedom of choice of religion. Khawarij would challenge him right in front of him. He allowed them. He never said shut up or kick them out. He always allowed, even when Khawarij went out and built their own space, he never attacked them. He only went after them when they started committing violence. So the principles that Imam Ali laid were so clear, and in those, we understand tabara wrongly. Either some people think tabara is curses. Tabara is not curses. Please read and go into depth of what it means. I'm saying for the ordinary Muslims, because Zuleika, your question is so clear and so useful. Tabara means being very clear. What is wrong is wrong. What is wrong is not necessarily to be abused or be cursed. So in that sense, it has to be clear. All those who will go deep into the character and statements and sermons of Imam Ali, this will become so obvious to them. Unfortunately, we don't get this from many scholars. All the top scholars, I mean, the narratives of the real scholars, when they will speak in Majalis, others, you will see it as a different tone. Even I'll mention Nusayri, my last point. I know I have taken a long time. On Nusayris, every Shia that I know of is very clear, because some Sunnis may be hearing, and for them to be clear, Shias are not Nusayris. Shias don't believe in the Nusayri worldview. However, if I'm an ordinary person, I'm sitting listening at times to some mankabat. Whenever the word comes, Nusayri say this, a certain smile comes to your face and you say, wah, 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 wah. So you are saying Nusayri are kafir, but what they have said, wah, 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 kya khoobsurat baat. How can you say, you are saying, wah, wah, kya, ye kufr ki kya khoobsurat baat ki aapne? तो ये clarity होनी बहुत जरूरी.
Abbas, oh my God, that's so many times I'm thinking that sitting in the mehfil myself. But quickly, what I want to do is go to my next question. There's a famous quote of Maula Ali you mentioned. Two kinds of persons will face ruin on my account. And we're now going into the exact other side of this discussion. Whoever exaggerates in loving me and whoever hates intensely. Those are the kind of persons who will face ruin on my account, he says. It's quite fascinating how different groups have institutionalized Imam Ali in interpreting him. And now we're kind of looking into the legacy of, we do the manqabats and there's many Sufi traditions out there, the qawalis, we're all sort of appreciating and understanding our love of Ali and expressing it. And I want to talk about the two extremes, the Kharijites on one extreme and the Nusayris on the other, with all of us sort of being in the middle here. What are your thoughts on the issue of contemporary ghulu? I know there's like the historical concept of it coming down all throughout the Islamic period, but how do we address it today, in today's world?
Extremely important question. I hope with my long responses, I'm not boring your audience, but this requires a slightly detailed answer, which I'll try again to be brief. The historical ghulu is different from contemporary ghulu. What I mean by that is historical ghulu, and this I have not gone into much detail in the book, maybe in the next book, inshallah. Historical ghulu, I have come to the conclusion, is a product of also manipulation by Muawiyah. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, I think the pillar of, not actually the pillar, the leader of the counter-revolution to Islam. I mean, the damage done by the Umayyads, and especially by Muawiyah and his father Abu Sufyan and Yazid, everyone, Ahl-Sunnat knows. But I really hope somebody is going to write in for Western audience biography of Muawiyah. Maybe I will at some time. The reason is that will explain exactly what has gone wrong with Islam. What he had done, I think, was that he had planted and penetrated people who thought that if I'll try to just get very abusive about Ali, it may not work, because people, even his close associates, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas or his son, I mean, one of them, when Muawiyah said to him, why are you not abusing Ali? And he said, well, how can I abuse Ali, who's the husband of Fatima, on whose the Khabar was said, I'll give alam to somebody who's, all the traits that we know were mentioned, about whom, who was in Mubayla. He mentioned three of the most important things. Muawiyah knew I have to do something different. And he went the other way, probably trying to associate ideas with the personality of Imam Ali, which were the other extreme, which an ordinary Muslim will say, what are they talking about? They are doing kufr. So the ghulu, the initial ghulu, I'm not saying I have empirical evidence, it seems to me might have been a part of a manipulation to do that. That's one idea. The contemporary ghulu is more of a reactive thing in some cases as well. Why? And this, the Sunnis need to understand that the Shias in their history have gone through a very oppressive time. The oppression and the atrocities that Shias have to face, were kept out, ignored at every level, humiliated, challenged on every spot, told to leave the mosques and pray elsewhere, etc., etc., etc. Shias have gone through a terrible time historically, and that has to be acknowledged by mainstream Muslim narrative. So in reaction, some Shias would go to different ends. That is one answer. The other one is, very briefly, we know that there are layers of meanings of Quran. I'm just using an example, 7 layers. What do we mean by that? हर बात हर एक के सुनने की, हर बात हर एक के समझने की नहीं है. In many a times, you will go to great Sufia and mystics and faqirs, and this was my other side deep interest to be on the lookout for such people. I've been some little successful, I should say, in spending time with many of these faqirs and spiritual masters, who would tell you something really deep after your 10th meeting, after 3 years, after 5 years. The first important communication with the fakir will start after your 7 years of doing various recitations, or when they train you to a certain point. In fact, remind me towards the end, I have a kind of a gift for everyone of a very special prayer of Imam Ali I found in a very unique book, which I had not heard anywhere, which might be very useful in the next 10 days. It comes from a very important spiritual source. But what I'm saying is, we know that there are these different stages. So some people get a chance, a hint of something of very high caliber. For example, when Imam Ali said, I know the pathways of heaven or the higher worlds better than the pathways of this world. What do we mean by that? An ordinary person will say, oh, you are saying Imam Ali could fly, Imam Ali could go spiritually all the time? How is that possible? Is there any other mention of this in the Quran? Is Quran saying there's a Muslim, there's a Mu'min, and there's this higher spiritual level? And you can't answer these questions because you will not be able to find those answers, because these were passed from the heart to heart. And there are so many aspects of Imam Ali which the Sufis got a good hint about. What I'm saying in reference to Hulu is, in certain cases, those are real and accurate things, however, got into the hands of some ignorant people who are not trained, who are not capable of that. And this is also some of the weaknesses, also through whatever means this happened. Then an ordinary person will just pick on one small thing. And they said, I say Ya Ali Madad, then that's it. I don't need anything else. And what Ya Ali Madad seems is not easy. Our one spiritual master told me, I asked him, Maulana, so when we say Ya Ali Madad, it's of course fine. We say it all the time. We recite Nade Ali. And I'm especially have a very, very strong faith on Nade Ali. But he said, no, always say Ya Ali Madad, Bihaqqi Allahu Samad. Always say Ya Ali Madad, Ya Ali Adrikni fi sabilillah. Because all the associations and all the authority and all the power of Ali is drawn from somewhere. Don't forget that connection. Then if we can make that connection, then Hulu is gone. Hulu is there when you attribute all these things to the personality and character or the personal attribute of Ali. Then it becomes a Hulu. The moment you link this with the higher domain of spirituality, then there's no problem. Then God gives whatever he gives to anyone. God has delegated power. That's the view, and I think very legitimate view in Shia Islam. That's how I will frame it.
Thank you so much. This is a fascinating discussion. I mean, a lot of the things that you're saying are very new and insightful for us, but some of them, and I would like to acknowledge this, we were discussing this earlier as well within the family, that, you know, you are preaching to the choir. So there is a certain level of, you know, we all agree with the things you're saying. But I got a question in our YouTube just now. The Prophet's Heir, just the title of the book. Did it at any point for any of your Sunni scholars, Sunni colleagues that you were speaking to seem problematic? Or another way of framing that same question is, what kind of response have you gotten now post release of the book from the Sunni scholars after reading the book and understanding, you know?
Great question. Honestly, this is, I wanted to touch upon these things, and these questions enable me. Just yesterday, I had an event in New York with Islamic Center in New York, where I was asked this question by our very dear and very capable young bright scholar, Sheikh Fayaz Jafar, who said, my student has come to me and said, and I will share with this audience also, the first severe criticism I've received on this was from a Shia. I'll not name him. He holds a very senior academic position, very senior, in a very important place. And he's an amazing scholar and writer. And he said to me, Hassan, change this. And I said, why? I mean, I was not expecting you, sir, to say this to me. He said, this will create sectarianism. I said, no, I beg to differ. This will not create sectarianism. One, it came out very organically. When I talked to my editor and the publisher, the title decided early on was The Life and Legacy of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I was very happy with this. This is what I wanted. Life and Legacy of Ali, or a biography of Ali. And then when they sent it for the peer review, it got severe challenge. The first peer reviewer, somebody from a mainstream, an Ivy League professor, a Muslim professor of Arab origin, he wrote such a terrible challenge, but he went too far and said, this Najl Balagha, he's mentioning as an important source, because I had said this is the primary source. He said this is a flawed source, this is very disputed. And I said to my editor, look, he is absolutely lying. It is not a disputed among Shia and Sunnis. Some statements are, but Najul Balagha is seen by Sunnis also as a very important book. This is available in every Sunni bookstore everywhere. And when I mentioned this, my publisher, rather than dismissing, because with a terrible review, there was a chance they will cancel my contract. The editor went to the extent of, one of them went to the extent of reading my whole idea, reading a couple of books. And she came back to me and said, Hassan, we thought about it again and we suggest another title after reading the work and after your proposal. And I said, what is it? And she said, The Prophet's Heir. I said, wow. If a Western Christian reader with open eyes and open mind have made this conclusion based on my proposal and their independent reading, because they thought Hassan is doing something wrong. They did their independent reading and reached this conclusion. Then there was something I said, no, I'm going to go for it. Absolutely. Very quickly, the same thing happened. It was my in one of my classes in political Islam. I was teaching the book of Leslie Heselton. Actually, that's from where this idea had come about. I asked the students, it was an elective in a major university, why are you taking this course on political Islam? It was about extremism, but also about Islam's main core message. And this student had the audacity to say, he said, I think Islam is the core of modern extremism. Islam as a religion is a terrorist religion. I'm in your class because I want to learn about this, how to counter it. I said, okay, that's the reason why you came. It's now my job, how I'll teach. I was using Leslie Heselton's book. He read it in 1 week. And 2 weeks later, and I actually salute him. He's a senior military officer. But I salute him because he came to me 2 weeks later and said, Professor Abbas, I've read this book and I've reached a conclusion. I only want you to tell me it is yes or no. I told him, I can't, as an academic, answer to anything necessarily yes and no. There are many nuances. There are many shades of gray, black and white. He said, no, my question is simple. I have realized that if Ali was given the right of caliphate right after the Prophet, Islam would not have gone through what it is going through now. Tell me yes or no. And I said, wow, if a person who started off as thinking of Islam as a terrorist religion, sorry for my words, can read a book which is written by a Jewish lady objectively based on Sunni sources and reach this conclusion, I'm going to continue with the Prophet's Heir. And very briefly, for those, if any one of you present, hopefully you'll gift it to some Sunnis and non-Muslims, and they say, why the Prophet's Heir? My answer is very short. Look at the meaning of the word heir in dictionary. Legal heir. Who was the legal heir? The son-in-law, the cousin, the person who was given the task to complete the funeral prayers and everything. No Sunni has ever said that I am the legal, or Sunni or any caliph or any companion, that I am the legal heir of the Prophet. Has anyone said that? Hazrat Ali had said, I am the legal heir. No one can challenge that. Secondly, political heir. The first three caliphs of Abu Bakr turned out to be political heir. Let's accept it. That's the reality. This is written in the book. You like it or not. Same with Umar and Usman. But Ali also became the fourth caliph. So if we say we mean political heir were four political heirs. Was the first political heir higher in status than the last caliph? All you need to understand is, I'm borrowing from a major Sunni scholar who was asked this question. Is Abu Bakr Afzal higher in status than Ali? And he said, was Moses higher in status than the Prophet Muhammad? Somebody said, no, how can it be? He said, no, because Moses came before Prophet Muhammad. So if Adam was the first one, the first prophet, does it mean Adam is the number one in status? No, the numbering is different. So what I'm saying is, you can't say Ali was not a political heir even by Sunni standards. Last but not the least is the spiritual heir. When the Prophet has said, Ali is to me what Aaron or Harun was to Musa, or when he said, Man kuntu Maula fahaza Aliyun Maula. If this was not spiritual heir declaration, what was it? Okay, for the sake of argument for a second, we say, okay, it was not about politics. It was not about Khilafat. The word Khilafat was unknown. But no one can deny that the least meaning it had at the Ghadir Khum was spiritual heir. So I have proved he was the legal heir, he was the political heir, he was the spiritual heir. So what's wrong in calling Ali the Prophet's heir? If there is another definition of heir in the dictionary in another meaning, please let me know and I'll reconsider.
Thank you so much. We've already taken a lot of your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your enlightening words. I will hand it over to Khosrow Bhai for some concluding remarks. Khosrow Bhai, mute button. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Actually, I wanted the concluding remarks by Dr. Hassan Abbas himself, but I want to just thank you for the program, and a pretty amazing program. We can go on forever, but we are limited by time here. So, and thanks to everyone for organizing this. Behind the scenes, my cousin Farhan Arastu is the brain behind this. I want to acknowledge her too. So, Hassan Bhai, if you want to just say a few words of conclusion.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I mean, the concluding words can be, this is an humble effort. The purpose is also to encourage young Muslims. And if you're hearing, whether you are a Shia or Sunni, please read more, write more for contemporary audience. There were many, for instance, cases where somebody had asked a meaning of a certain verse, and one of our imams said, well, this is not relevant today. Imam Jafar Sadiq, on a couple of things actually related to the 12th Imam. He had said at that time, he said the meaning and interpretation of this verse will become obvious in later times. So we should not think that if the four great scholars of Islam, whether Sheikh Saduq, Sheikh Mufid, Tusi, and the Sunni tradition, or all the great these scholars, they've done a phenomenal job, all of them. Yes, there were distortions, fabrications, other efforts, but still, I think there is so much which is very easy for anyone to find the truth in terms of basic ideas. In my final comment will be, so write about it. Maybe someone should think about writing a biography. Somebody approached me recently from Pakistan saying, I want to write a biography of Imam Hassan, because she argued that Imam Hassan actually and other Imams, what they did was the norm, and what Imam Hussain alayhi salam has done was the exception. I said, well, I've not heard it like that, but why don't you write? She said, you think it will be okay? I said, it is okay or not okay. If you have enough ideas and you have enough materials, research and write. When we say Imam Ali was at the highest of status because he was, the Prophet had said, Ana Madinatul Ilmi wa Aliyun Babuha, it means we still have to go to the door of Ali to get knowledge. That door has not closed. Let's keep on going to that door through Imams, through the Imam of the times, through an effort to learn and educate ourselves. Unless we are doing that, we are not loyal to the legacy of Imam Ali. That's my central point. I have so many thoughts that are still coming to my mind, and I'm really feeling a craving to share, but I will keep it for some maybe other time. Keep in mind also that in our focus on the politics and the rivalries and challenges, don't forget why Imam Ali had to struggle through. He struggled through to keep the message alive. So if we are remembering all the politics and other nuances and intricacies, extremely important, but don't miss out what he had said. We read, I'm sure, I bet all of people on this forum read Duai Kumail. There is much more. And what I have to share with you, as I had said, as a gift, now I hope I will be able to find it. I have. This is from a very old book that I found, that a person went to Imam Ali. And this is my closing. This is also the gift I wanted to mention. And the person said to Imam Ali, I'm sorry, I'm having my phone in the hand so that I can read it from there. He said to Imam Ali, he stopped him and he said, Commander of the Faithful, I ask you in the name of God, bestow upon me the loftiest part of this special knowledge that God's messenger bestowed upon you. From that knowledge with Jibrail bestowed upon him, from that knowledge with which the merciful sent him. So he was asking, give me your most secret prayer. And Imam Ali said, if you had not asked in God's name, I would not have revealed to you what I had intended to conceal. Important. What I had intended to conceal, because it was a higher level secret, until I laid in my grave. And then Imam Ali said, okay, I'm going to share with you those prayers. And I'm sure some of you already know about this. This is the verses of Surah Hadid, first a few verses, and then he mentioned a few verses of, because now I've started this argument, I have to give you the exact verses. So the verses of Surah Hadid and then Surah Hashr. But which verses? I am just going to mention these to you. If you bear with me for 1 second, just a second, I have to get the exact book to give you the exact verse. Just bear with me.
I can see everyone getting out their pens and papers to mark that for the next 10 days, inshallah, of Ramadan. May Allah really give you all the ajr for helping us learn more and for increasing our spiritual understanding of Imam Ali during these months, during this month, and especially during this weekend where we are commemorating the shahadat of our Maula.
Yes, thank God I found it. I for a second got worried. So this is Surah Hadid, 57th Surah of Quran, verse 1 to 6. So first you will read these 6 verses, Surah Hadid, verse 1 to verse 6. Then you will, right after that, you will go to Surah Hashr, the 59th Surah, which is next to it almost. And you will recite verse 22 to 24. And for the benefit of this event, let me very quickly read these, because Imam Ali said, this is the special secret I had. And he said, I would not have shared it with you unless you had put God in between. So this is from where the book I'm borrowing. They said, if you recite this every day, start reciting it and you'll see the secrets of this. And these are all the names of God. That's so insightful. So first I'm reciting just the translation of Surah Hadid, these verses 1 to 6. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Everything in the heavens and the earth extols God. He's the mighty, the wise. The kingdom of the heavens and the earth belongs to him. He gives life and he gives death. And he has the power over all things. He's the first and the last, the manifest and the hidden. And he has knowledge of all things. He's the one who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Then he sat upon the throne. He knows what enters into the earth and what comes out of it, what descends from the sky and what rises up to it. He is with you wherever you may go. And God sees all that you do. He's the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and all things return to him. He makes the night give way to day. He makes the day give way to night, and he knows all that is in your hearts. And then Surah Hashr, verse 22 to 24, the translation. He knows the unseen and the visible. He's the merciful and the compassionate. He's God, other than whom there is no God. The King, the Holy, Peace, the Preserver, the Guardian, the Almighty, the Subjugator, the Exalted. Glorified be he above the partners they ascribe unto him. He's God, the Creator, the Originator, the one who gives shape. His are the most beautiful names, and he's the mighty, he's the Almighty, the Wise. God bless you.
Beautiful. So thank you, Hassan Bhai, and for your time and an excellent discussion. Inshallah, we'll have more of these. So, and Zulaikha, thank you for conducting this fascinating conversation, a very candid conversation. So, inshallah, we'll have more of these.
It was so good to speak to you. I just felt like I wish we could continue this conversation for much longer, but really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, Dr. Abbas.
Thank you so much to everyone. Indebted for your support.
Just once again, this is the book, guys. Upside.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.